Welcome to OLC 4.0. Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is Term 2B. We are on Class 17. Today we are going to be talking about Assignments 25 and begin Assignment 26. And we're also going to talk about using a thesaurus. Today is May 13th, 2025, and this is Jillian Percy. Here are all the ways to contact us. If you want to talk to me while I'm in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to talk to me while I'm off the air, that's the office phone number, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. My main email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca, and my secondary email is jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. I find that's the one that students use if they are doing a lot of Google document assignments, and then often they use that. It's just as easy because it's a Google one. I have a Facebook account as a teacher. That is G Percy Wassa. If you are sending me a message on there, make sure to friend me. Let me know what course you're in, what assignment you need help with, and what your proper name is. Like, we often use kind of silly things for our Facebook, and I don't necessarily know how to find you in the student database without your full name. If you are wanting to watch one of the previously recorded classes, there are two different channels you can use. The school channel is called Wassa Distance Education YouTube channel, and it has all the courses from all the teachers in the school from this year. But what it doesn't have is the current class that I am recording right now. It doesn't have this version. It has the version that I did in term 1 during September and October. Now, it is not significantly different. They're minor little tweaks, so it's not a big deal. But I'm just letting you know, if you want the one that I'm doing right now, you have to be on the G Percy Wassa channel. That does also have my term 1A stuff, but it also has my term 2B stuff that I'm doing right now. Okay, how to hand in assignments. This is my most asked question. And there are a lot of different ways, but the main thing is whatever you do, you're going to eventually send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. That is our email database for all assignments handed in to any teacher. When you do that, the secretary logs that you submitted the work, they print it off, they put it in the right mailbox for the teacher. The big thing with this is if something were to happen to me or if another teacher took over the course, other people can still access it this way. If you send it only to my email, nobody else can access it. On your actual assignment, put your full name, the course name, and the assignment name and number. Not just in the email, because like I said, it gets printed off. So a lot of the times the teacher never sees the actual email. So if you only included it there, I won't see it. Especially your name, please. I get a lot of assignments with no name on them, and then I'm kind of having to like run through the database and see who's handed things in recently and try and guess who it might be. So we don't want that, right? If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. Now, if you want to hand me in the rough draft and get my feedback first, that's fine. Just let me know that that's what you're wanting, okay? Sometimes somebody just sends me one draft and I don't know, is it the rough draft? Is it the good draft? Oh, the rough draft's worth 10, the good draft is worth 20, but I'm just having to guess. Not a good way to do assignments, okay? Now, if you actually want to hand it in, there's more than one way. If you have a learning center in your community, you can give it to the DEC, ask them to scan it, and they can send it email to me. If you do that, hang on to your originals. You will need them for a portfolio assignment at the end of the course. You can also fax them over to me, 1-800-463-7852. That's if you live in Ontario. If you are elsewhere in the country, 1-877-990-2023. You can email it to me. Like if you've saved it as any kind of a document on your computer, just write me an email and attach it. Some people do the same thing, only they do it through Google Docs. You could mail it to me, snail mail, but it takes a while. And then it'll take even longer once it gets to my pile because I have a very big marking pile. So I don't recommend this. If you do that, make sure you've got photocopies. Don't hand me in your originals, okay? The other common way is to take a photograph. And then with the photograph, either send it to me through Facebook or email, When you do that, the photograph needs to be clear, easy to read, and then make sure you send it or share it as an attachment rather than just making it the body of the email. For some reason, when we go to print it, it won't print properly. I have to kind of save it, pull it off, put it in a new document and play around with it. It's really tricky for some reason. I don't know why. If you're going to do that, it's actually much better if you do the scanner app. Any kind of scanning app that you can put on your phone will work. It's going to give me a much better quality that's easy to read. Sometimes photographs don't work very well, especially if you took them at a funny angle or from a funny distance. There's all sorts of scanner apps. I use Adobe Scan. It's free. Adobe's a reliable company. It's pretty easy to use, but you can use whatever app you want. There's no real matter one way or the other. Install whatever app you're using and open it. This is the steps for Adobe. I imagine they're all pretty similar, but yours might look slightly different. Take a picture. Now you can see there's little 4 dots. They line up with the corners so that you make sure you get the part that you want. If for say some reason you had like a coffee stain on the edge that you didn't want, you could just kind of narrow it in a little bit. You can also adjust the borders a little bit if you ended up, say, getting a little bit of your table in, or there was a secondary page of some other assignment that happened to get caught in. You can play with it a little bit then. And then you just keep on repeating steps 2 and 3 until you have all the assignments, all the pages of that assignment done. Tap continue, then you can review it. If you need to redo one, like if it came up kind of blurry, that's when you can do it. You can also put it in order, like say you got things mixed up. Then you hit save PDF. Now it's all in order. You can give it a name, and then you can save it wherever you save things. Your Google Drive, your Dropbox, if you've got some other sort of storage, and then send it as an attachment, okay? Now, we are currently in week 5. This is a 9-week course, but remember, this is the last term of the year before summer term. Technically, the last day of this term is June 13th. And on June 13th, I only accept exams, which we don't have for this course. So really the last day we can accept assignments is June 12th, okay? This course doesn't even have an exam any longer. It just has a culminating activity, which takes a little while to complete. Now, it depends a little bit on how quickly you write, but it's got a lot of assignments. Please do not attempt to leave this to the last day, especially if you are working full-time. It will be almost impossible for you to complete, okay? Once you start Unit 3 or maybe Unit 4, depending on how fast you work, ask me for the culminating activity so that you've got plenty of time to work on it. It is worth 20% of your overall grade. That means if you did it really well, you have the opportunity to raise your mark almost 2 grades. So if you walk into that with a D and you do really well on it, you can suddenly increase your mark to a B. So it's really important to do a good job on that. Now, if you are a potential graduate, and you should already know that, Ronaldo would have been in touch with you and talked to you about, hey, let's keep on going, all that kind of good stuff, then I strongly recommend that you get things completed by May 30th, because I will need time to do your marking. There are a lot of potential grads, and it takes me a while to do all the marking and write up a report card. And we want to make sure we have that done in time for graduation day. I currently have 134 students registered in this course. If everybody chose to hand in all 40 assignments on the last day, there is no way I could complete all the marking in time. I just wouldn't be able to. Now, if you are running behind in your assignments and think that, you know what, I'm probably not going to get finished by June 13th, that's fine. Just talk to me and let me know. We can enroll you in the summer version of the course, and you can just continue your work then. We just roll over your marks and you keep on going, okay? I will also be the one doing the marking in the summer. There are no live classes during the summer term, and I won't be at the office, but you can email me stuff and I will get back to you. It may just take a couple days rather than instantly, like when I'm working full time. Now, if you're wanting to do that, on Facebook, we've got a Facebook page called WASA Distance Education Center. It should look something like this. And there is a little post about it, and it's got a little online link. If you do https://wasaregistration.ca, it will pull it up and it will allow you to register in the summer course. You can also let me know that you're wanting to do that, or talk to the office. Particularly, I think Michelle will be a good person to talk to, and let her know that you're wanting to enroll. Okay. Just so we know what numbers we're going into the summertime with. Okay. Here are the learning goals. I don't know if we're going to get through all of this today. This is ambitious. Use appropriate strategies to expand our vocabulary through reading and writing. Explain the purpose and uses of opinion pieces of writing. Use my knowledge of the organizational structure of opinion pieces to identify opinions, main ideas, arguments, and supporting details. Construct a series of paragraphs clearly stating an opinion in the opening paragraph and supporting the opinion in subsequent paragraphs with clear, sufficient, and convincing reasons. Use appropriate strategies to organize ideas and information for writing, and then create a first draft that includes the main and supporting details in the required format. Now, this one, that's probably going to be tomorrow's, is my guess, and sort of same thing here, but we're going to kind of get started on that today, okay? Okay, yesterday you would have heard assignment 24. Assignment 24 is a three-parter. Apologize for my my voice here. And part A is where you're doing the planning for it. Part B is where you're making corrections. And then part C is the final version. That is where you take all the corrections that you've made, do a neat copy, and then hand that in to me. Now, part of this is I'm trying to get across the idea of how to do the writing process and give you lots of marks for doing the writing process. Some people will try and skip A and B and just do C. The problem is C is only worth 10 marks. It's just not going to, it won't even let you pass the course if you haven't done A and B. Okay. There's no real way for me to mark part C unless part B has been handed in because that shows me all the revisions. Okay. This is really important. Okay. And it's because being able to do this is a huge thing that I look for as the course goes on. It's coming up in assignment 26. It comes up in assignment 44. It's a big part of this course, okay? So we really do want to work on that. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay. Your original rough draft probably would be all separated in part A. Part B, you would have added corrections. Now mine are done in typing just because otherwise it'd be pretty hard to read. You probably have this in handwriting and you might have like a word above or a word below. I just did mine in red to kind of get across some of the corrections so other people can see it, right? So I added a descriptive word, first quilt block. It's easy and fun to create a quilt block from start to finish. Here I made sure to start with a capital letter. I gave you a little hint about how to choose fabric. I talked to you about how to use a ruler. I added a step that I was afraid I missed. I corrected a spelling mistake, all these kind of little things. Then I want to join it all up. I don't want to leave it all separated like this because that isn't really how we see things, okay? Here is how it looks finally. And this is what I would be marking for part C, okay? If there's anything you want to fix, do it now and try and make it as neat as possible. Try, as always, to hand me in the cleanest possible copy so I can read it easily. Sometimes I've had people try and do changes here, but if it's messy, it can be really hard for me to read and it can actually impact your marks negatively, okay? I mark part C this way. Basically, everything gets 2 marks. 2 marks is if it's done perfectly. So I'm looking for knowledge that you understand your topic and that you understand how to do the procedural paragraph format. Then I'm looking at your thinking. How do you develop your ideas? How do you organize your ideas? How do you decide what's important? How do you summarize it? How do you explain it? Then I'm looking at your communication skills. Are you writing in full sentences? Are you using good paragraph structure? Are you using correct grammar and conventions? And then I'm looking at how you applied what you know about procedural paragraphs, doing the title, including materials, ordering the steps, imperative sentences, closing sentence, and then length. I didn't used to have this, but I kept having people hand in things that were like a sentence or too long. And there was really no way for me to mark that. So I've added that in so people understand that that is an important part. If you've only done a sentence or two, I just no way for me to tell, which means functionally you end up failing the assignment. So please make sure you follow the length of the assignment, okay? Okay, and now we're going to be looking at expanding vocabulary. We've talked before about using dictionaries. Today we're talking about how to use a thesaurus. And not everybody has used one. A thesaurus is usually, it's a lot like a dictionary, but it will include different synonyms, words that are similar to the word you're looking for, or it will sometimes include antonyms, words that are the opposite of what you're looking for. There are even some dictionaries that will have like a thesaurus at the back of it. It kind of depends on how big your dictionary is. Sometimes when we're writing and we're scrambling to finish a writing assignment, our mind can go blank on trying to think of words. We've used the same word over and over. We know we should change it, but we can't quite think of a new one to put in its place, right? This is a great time to pull out the thesaurus and give yourself some ideas. Using a print thesaurus like a book style and an online thesaurus on your computer is similar, but it's not exactly the same. On the next page, we're going to look at the print thesaurus first. Even if you don't have one at your house, if you have a learning center in your community, you should have one of these. And even if there's no learning center, most elementary schools will have these. It's quite possible that if you ask somebody, they'll let you borrow one. We also have some here if anybody wants one, as far as I understand. I know I've got spelling. I'm pretty sure I've got the sources. Okay, so here's a page. You can see it looks a lot like a dictionary. It's got guide words up top. Cold is the first word on the page. Command is the last word on the page. So I could only find words that start with CO and between COL and COM here. The main word you're looking up is bolded or put in dark. Here they also put it in a different color. They're going to put them in alphabetical order. It's usually 2 columns like this. It will sometimes tell you the part of speech. It will often tell you many synonyms. So I'm going to look at cold right now. Now, cold is one of those words that has more than one meaning. So it's going to give you synonyms for each one of the meanings. So cold as an adjective, chilly, cooler, icy, frigid or frozen. Then it gives you a sample sentence. A glass of cold lemonade tastes wonderful on a hot summer day. Now, two means it's a different meaning. Aloof, unfriendly, or haughty. Sometimes we'll say, oh, that guy's cold. And this is what they're saying is similar. The losing boxer gave the judges a cold stare. So those are both adjectives. Now we're looking at noun. When we're talking about cold as a noun, chill, coldness or coolness, iciness or freeze. When I went outside without my jacket, I shivered in the cold. So there it's basically the state of being cold. And then the second definition of a noun, of it as a noun, illness, fever, sickness, or virus. Sean had to stay home from school because he had a bad cold, right? So when you're sick. So not all of them have that. Some just have one meaning, okay? But some words have more than one meaning, and you want to be cautious of that because it can trip you up when you're thinking of synonyms. Now, if you're using an online thesaurus, I strongly suggest using a name brand one rather than one just like thesaurus.com, okay? There are a lot of really reliable dictionary makers who put out an online thesaurus, things like Merriam-Webster, Collins, Gage. Take a look through. You'll find that there's some that you like better than others. Okay, so here's an example of how I might use it. Let's say I've got this picture. I'm trying to describe this city scene, and I keep using the word buildings, but it doesn't really bring any specific picture to mind. And I can't just keep using the word building in every single sentence. It's boring, and it can even be kind of confusing. Well, what are some possible alternative words that the thesaurus suggests? So here's what comes up. Now see here how it says relevance and it gives the darkest color. So the ones that are in dark orange are the ones that are closest in meaning. The ones that are a little bit lighter orange are slightly farther away. And the ones that are really light are fairly far away. And depending on your sentence, might not even quite work. So they say structure, house, or edifice are the most similar. Then we've got hut, shed, or erection, construction, cabin, or castle, cottage, or tower. And then there's a whole bunch of ones that they're saying are not relevant. I would consider them quite relevant. Shack, chalet, villa, pile, chateau, hutment, mansion, lodge, manor, hovel, or estate, bungalow, skyscraper, shanty, palace, hall, or summer house. So in the particular picture that we were looking at in the city, not all of those are going to work, right? There's no summer houses in there. And a chateau is thing you would see in like France or Switzerland. So also you're not going to see that. Some of the ones I thought might work would be things like structure, edifice, tower, or skyscraper. I also checked some of the other online thesaurus sites. Sometimes I get similar words, sometimes I get different ones. Other words that came up were things like monument, high rise, monolith, architecture, design, development, creation, complex, or facility. So here's my sample one where I've used the same word over and over again. He stood in the middle of all the buildings, feeling lost. There was a squarish orange building to the right, and there were several taller buildings behind him. The skinny building with the turrets on the top seemed the best place to look. The tall brick building might make a good hideout as well. You can see how it's really not very descriptive and it doesn't give you a very clear picture at all. Same thing, but now I've used some synonyms. He stood in the middle of all the buildings, feeling lost. There was a squarish orange complex to the right, and there were several taller skyscrapers behind him. The skinny castle-looking creation with the turrets on top seemed the best place to look. The tall brick apartments might make a good hideout as well. Visually, that gives me so much clearer of an idea. Okay. Here's what we were talking about before. If a word has multiple meanings, make sure you choose the synonym that has the right meaning. So in an online thesaurus, what I found was this. The word charge, for example, it's got all these different meanings as a noun, all these different meanings as a verb. And if I was wanting to find a synonym, I would need to make sure I was choosing the right example. So if I said the police are going to charge him with murder, going back here, charge, impose or accuse might work, right? And then I would get these different words: accuse, indict, prosecute, impeach, call on, taxed, incriminate, blame, those kind of things. But if I want to use the word like, please put our lunch on the charge account, I might have words like expense, cost, expenditure, outlay, disbursement, pocket money, okay? I want to make sure that I understand what I mean in the first sentence to be able to pick a synonym that makes sense. I would strongly advise don't pick a synonym if you've never heard it before used at all, because it's possible that you'll be using it incorrectly. What we're looking for here is where you're kind of jogging your memory and picking a word that you don't necessarily use every day, but that's a good word that you understand and you know it makes sense in that sentence, okay? So the other thing is, even when you're picking the right meaning, keep in mind that synonyms are alike, but they're not exactly alike, okay? When you look at the thesaurus, most words are going to have multiple synonyms, but most of them don't mean exactly the same thing. So just picking any one of them to substitute can give you or your reader some misunderstanding of your sentence. Let's say I was writing a paragraph for your teacher and you want to explain how hot the temperature is. So you check the thesaurus and you grab a word at random. Oh, fervid. Awesome. And then you proceed to write this sentence in your paragraph. He felt so fervid on that summer day by the pool as he talked to Barbara, the postwoman. Your teacher, however, knows that fervid doesn't just mean hot, but means intensely enthusiastic or passionate. So when I'm reading that sentence, I'm trying to figure out, do they mean that he's hot? Or do they mean that he's got an undying love for this postwoman, right? That's what I'm saying is be careful if you're choosing a word that you're not really familiar with, so you don't end up accidentally saying something that isn't quite what you were thinking of. This is similar to the idea of what we call sometimes shades of meaning. Words that are very, very similar, but have a slightly different intensity to them. Okay? So, some words for cold. I'm going to give you some words. Think about which ones are least cool, which ones seem most cool. Glacial, chilly, cool, icy, freezing, brisk, bracing, arctic, or frigid. So sometimes these are a little bit subjective. Like I might think one's a little bit colder and you might think one's a little bit warmer. But just looking at those right away, which one would you think is the most cold? Okay. For me, I would tend to think either Arctic or glacial. I'm going to put my little square under Arctic here, for that's my most cold. And I think glacial would be my next coldest. Okay. Thinking about these again, which one would be kind of the closest to warm, like the least cold? Um, brisk, maybe, uh, or cool. I think brisk, right? Because you could have brisk even on like a summer day. Brisk. And then I would say cool or maybe bracing. Bracing is a little bit, to me, mentally. Cool. And then maybe bracing. And then we got chilly or icy. I would say chilly is next. Icy or freezing. I know technically freezing is 0, but when I say I'm freezing, I mean something closer, cooler than icy, I think. Icy, freezing, frigid. So see how they don't all give across the same idea of how cold things are. This is really important when you think of words for emotions, right? Like irritated and angry are similar, but they aren't exactly the same. Neither would be the same as like berserk or raging. So keep that in mind as you're doing stuff as well. How does that affect your writing? Again, if a synonym is different than what you thought you were aiming for, it can give your reader the wrong impression. Let's say you're trying to convey that a family is outside and there's a very light wind outside, but here's what you write. Mom and my sister picked flowers as a blustering wind rustled through the trees. So now blustering's a heavy wind to me. So in my mind, I now have a comical picture of mom and sister. They're picking flowers and their hats are flying off their head, their hair's whipping around, and the flowers are falling apart in their hands. That's maybe a very different picture than what you were trying to convey. If a different word were used, say, Mom and my sister picked flowers as a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, that's a much calmer picture. And just to kind of give you an idea, mildly windy day, extremely windy day. And there's poor mom hanging on for dear life on the tree. So keep it in mind as you're using synonyms, okay? All right, we are going to be looking at explaining the purpose and uses of opinion pieces. I'm not sure why I included all of these. We're looking at opinion pieces. Okay. Number 25 there used to be a journal here. I had to take it out for various reasons. We just are doing, actually, I'm sorry. Different type of journal here. We've worked on a wide variety of different writing formats, news reports, personal reflections or journals, informational or procedural paragraphs, summaries, and opinions. In your learning journal, explain the purpose and characteristic of each writing format and give an example of when you might use that format. Then explain your opinion and what you thought about writing in each format. For example, was it easy or hard? Were you familiar with this writing format? Which one was your favorite? Please write at least 12 to 15 sentences on this topic and see the rubric below for the marking scheme. So marking scheme, sorry. This is going to be length is halfway. I don't know why it didn't quite come up. We're looking that you show that you understand the question as well as the journal. that you select relevant details and examples, that you use good writing skills, good vocabulary, sentence structure, good application of language conventions, the length, and then, now here's the thing. Hang on, let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, I don't need that. Hang on. Okay, we go. Before I started writing, I would probably take the time to brainstorm a little bit so that you've got enough to say. I set mine up as a chart. You don't have to. This isn't required, but I think it's a helpful thing to do. So here I put down my different writing formats. What's their purpose? What's their characteristics? When could I use it? Give an example, my opinion of it. Once I've got that, it's easy for me to just go across the line and use that to create my little chunk of information on that particular writing format. So here how I grabbed all this information and now I'm turning it into like a little mini paragraph basically. News reports are written to inform people about the events in their community, country, and around the world. They have a unique format that uses an inverted triangle in which the most important information is listed first rather than in sequence. I might write a news report on a fire that occurred in our community for the Wawatay News. I find this format very hard to write, not my favorite type of format, because the inverted triangle style is not how I naturally organize information in my head. So again, see I've got just like these little mini jot notes, and then I just turn it into little sentences there. So that tiny little section talking about just one format is already 4 sentences. There are 5 different formats to discuss, so it should be really easy to write 12 or 15 sentences like the assignment requests. Each format you discuss could be their own separate paragraph to help make organization easier. Remember that when I'm putting a length like this, it's a minimum, not a maximum. You can write more than that if you've got more to say. It's a good idea to include an opening sentence and wrap up your journal with some sort of concluding sentence as well. Now, rough draft. I am not demanding that you do a rough draft. It is ultimately up to you. I think if you do a good job with the brainstorming, using a chart like I showed you, then your first draft is probably going to be pretty strong. But in many cases, taking the time to do revisions and editing will result in an even stronger piece of writing and a much stronger mark. For many students, this is worth it. But I know some students are really trying to make a specific deadline. They're working as fast as they can, and they're not really overly worried about high marks. If that's the case for you, this is one area where you could cut corners and it probably is not going to affect your grade too much, right? I'm not expecting it, so it's okay to not hand it in. Okay. Then we're moving on to talking about opinions. We talked a little bit about opinions in Unit 1 when we were working on assignment 15 and 16. And we're coming back to it now because one of the requirements for this course is doing a rather large writing piece on an opinion. When someone asks your opinion on something, they want to know what you think or what you feel about something. And we often explain our reasons for ideas. We do this all the time in our everyday speech. Here are some examples. Like one person might say, "Oh, I heard they're putting up a new fast food place on that corner." And their friend says, "Really? What a terrible idea. That is already one of the busiest roads in the area." So they just gave their opinion. What's their opinion? It's a terrible idea. Why? Because it's already a busy road. Here's another example. What did you think of that movie last night? Oh, it was horrible. The acting was really poor and the plot went all over the place. It really wasn't worth seeing. What was their opinion? It was horrible. Why? What were their reasons? The acting was bad, the plot was no good, and they felt like overall it wasn't worth seeing. So technically, any kind of opinion writing has one main overall purpose, which is to persuade. But there's different types of persuasion. There can be very specific types of purposes, like maybe persuade you to buy some goods or services, or maybe convince you that someone's ideas are right, or maybe justify a recent decision or action taken by someone. Maybe they're trying to argue in favor of a new law or policy or procedure. or maybe trying to explain the reasons why there's a new change in a business or a school or an office. Those are all different types of persuasion, but sometimes people don't think of those as persuasion. That's why I'm including some examples. Opinion writing has more than one format. We're going to be doing a special type called basically an essay, but it really depends on what the writer's overall purpose is. Are they trying to get you to buy something, to think differently, to act differently, to help a certain cause? So some of the formats might be things like advertising, to persuade people to buy a product or service, letters to the editor responding to a recent article explaining their opinion, complaint letters to businesses about things the customer wants changed, grant proposals where you're trying to convince somebody to give you money, reviews for games, books, movies explaining your opinion on what you saw or did, opinion columns in the paper on current news events, public health ads trying to get people to take certain healthy actions, like we all saw all those posters about washing your hands during COVID, political speeches or commercials trying to get people to vote for a certain candidate. So here's example of two different types. This one is a letter. I was saddened to see the removal of benches throughout the memorial garden. I understand that this is an attempt to combat homeless people sleeping on the benches, but in reality it harms everyone. Many older people walk through that park and need a bench to sit down and enjoy the view. Young parents often sit down to rest while their children play. Let's not harm everyone in an attempt to stop a few troublemakers. Signed, Betty Royale. So there's a letter format. And then next to it is a film review format. It's a little bit different, but still trying to persuade somebody about your opinion. If you were thinking of checking out the new horror film, The Night Watch, don't bother. I was looking forward to this film based on the trailers that made it look edgy and exciting. However, the film has so many flaws that it is virtually unwatchable. The lead actor, Matt Rowan, appears to be relying on his good looks rather than his acting skills, although his girlfriend, Keira Bentley, does her best to carry him. The plot is confusing and lacks suspense, which is a key element in any horror film. The villain is not frightening, but simply pathetic and miserable. Save your money and skip this show. So in your book now, there's a little, it's going to go on to assignment 26. I'm not going to kind of read that part. I'm just going to kind of talk about, hang on a second. I'm missing something real quick. Okay. I'm going to skip over that and just talk about opinions kind of generally, okay? They're calling it a series of paragraphs. I don't know why. It's a really long and lengthy phrase for something we just call an essay, but maybe they think people will be intimidated by the word essay, but it's nothing to be scared of. In assignment 15 and 16, we created an opinion paragraph. When we did that, we started with stating our opinion on a controversial issue. Then we stated at least 3 reasons or arguments to support our opinion, and for each reason we gave an example to illustrate the idea. Then we closed it down with a restatement of our opinion on the issue. An opinion essay is kind of similar, but basically each sentence kind of becomes its own section or paragraph. The opening sentence becomes an entire opening paragraph. Each reason plus example becomes an entire paragraph of its own. Usually you add some more examples. And then the final closing sentence becomes an entire closing paragraph. So here's how it might look. Opening paragraph explains the topic and the opinion, lists in condensed format the reasons why they hold their opinion, usually at least 3 main points that's going to each get their own paragraph to follow. Then we would have the first body paragraph, states the first reason for their opinion, give lots of details or reasons about that, generally at least 5 sentences long. Second body paragraph states the second reason, expands on the details, gives some examples, again, at least 5 sentences long. Third body paragraph, same thing, gives another reason, gives some details or some examples, again, at least 5 sentences long. And then a closing paragraph restates the topic sentence and briefly restates the arguments used. Okay. So on the next page, in your book, you'll see this as well. There's a sample opinion as a series of paragraphs from a student in the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. that was written in an earlier year. This is not anybody from our course, by the way, not anybody from up here. I don't even know how old this is at this point. Okay. You should read through it to get a sense of how it might sound. Also, so you can see how long it is. Okay, this is a much longer piece than what we are doing, have done so far. Okay, now I did it over in typing because I was worried that I know they don't really teach cursive these days anymore. And I was concerned that people might not be able to read it just to it being cursive. So they're being required to write an essay on the issue of, is it a good idea for high school students to have a part-time job? Now, I'm going to say I felt like there was a few problems with this one. It isn't a perfect one because it is based on a real student, okay? So I really didn't like the first sentence, so I crossed it off. It's kind of repetitive. It more or less just repeats the second sentence, so I just got rid of it, okay? Then we've got, in my opinion, I believe that it is a great idea for students to have part-time jobs for three main reasons. That's my opening sentence. That's my opinion on this topic. And then I'm going to give you my three main reasons for that. Firstly, it provides them with work experience that can be developed and further explored in for future occupations. Secondly, it teaches students important personal skills and how to work socially with other coworkers. Lastly, I believe it gives the students a chance to give back to their community. These reasons are why part-time jobs help students grow into responsible, capable adults. Now, I added this sentence. For some reason, they didn't have one, but they should have. So I'm adding it so you know it should be there. So first body paragraph, it's going to have an opening sentence, it's going to have a closing sentence, and the middle should have lots of examples, and you can explain your ideas in more detail here. You don't want to have only one example or one sentence here. It doesn't make sense, okay? So first of all, working part-time jobs at an early age allows us students to develop mature skills and work experience. Going to work only when you are an adult is a disadvantage because you have to learn everything right from scratch. When you have the ability to explore different jobs as a student, I think that you can learn lifetime experiences that you will need in future occupations. It is much easier to develop and explore new ideas as an employee when you are young, so that you can learn lifetime experiences that you will need in future occupations. It is much easier to develop and explore new ideas as an employee when you're young, so you can learn from your mistakes and use them to your advantage to build on those experiences. Altogether, I believe that working a part-time job as a student provides you with learning experiences every day. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second one. Or no, is this the second one? Hang on. Oh, it got moved around. Sorry. Hang on. Along with experience, part-time jobs teach you important personable skills. Working as a student teaches you skills such as responsibility, respect for coworkers, and most importantly, social skills. You can develop these skills every day on a part-time job, but what is key is that you can improve on these skills and use them as an adult. What better way is there to learn how to treat others and take care of yourself than to develop them at an early age? Also, working as a student allows you to learn how to manage your time efficiently. As a whole, it allows you to develop many skills needed for future jobs. So just to show you, the second paragraph started, or second body paragraph started with my second reason. Then I explain all my reasons and give my examples, and then I restate my reason. I know this is really repetitive. So you have to kind of think of a way to do it so it doesn't sound like the exact same sentence. But this format is considered appropriate for an essay where you kind of want to make it really clear. The thing with when people read longer pieces of writing, it's really easy for them to lose track of what's going on. So this repetition is actually really helpful to kind of introduce your idea, explain your idea, and then summarize your idea, basically, okay? And then our third body paragraph, I think that working at a young age gives students a chance to give back to their community. People are always stressing on how us teenagers do not do enough for society, and part-time jobs allow us to do this. For example, students will often do volunteer work as a type of part-time work to try out new types of jobs. These are jobs that might not get done without students. It also allows us to provide everyday services to people. Students could be working as cashiers or customer assistance helpers, or doing part-time work as a janitor or even tutoring at a high school. Altogether, students can get involved in their communities and give back good service to many people. So again, they've restated their main idea. Now, the concluding paragraph restates your overall opinion, and then the next three sentences generally summarize each one of your body paragraphs. So in conclusion, I believe that giving students a part-time job is a great idea. Why? It gets students off the streets and integrate learning experiences. Reason number one. Reason number two, it not only provides us with great skills, but teaches us discipline and responsibility. And then reason number three, it gives teenagers a chance to become personable and develop for future endeavors. And then I summarize my opinion again. Part-time jobs help improve student lives in so many ways. So there is a lot of repetition in this kind of essay, okay? If you like visuals, here's an overall visual of how it would look. Introductory paragraph, first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, concluding paragraph. Be sure to leave a space between each one of those paragraphs. It makes it easier for me to see. It also gives you and me room to write something if we need to add a little bit of commentary. It's also a good idea if you're handwriting to skip spaces because it gives me, again, a little bit of room to make notes if I need to make notes about stuff, okay? Okay. I think I want to skip over that. Where am I at? Yeah. So this essay was an actual student sample. It's not perfect. That's why I made some additions. We could do even more if we wanted to, but I'm showing it here so you get an overall sense of the structure and how it sounds. As far as I can tell, most of my students that I have are capable of writing this just as well as that one or even better. But it does take some time, and I find using the writing stages is kind of crucial to doing a good job. So brainstorming before you start writing your own essay is a huge help. It can give you a roadmap of where you're trying to get on with your writing. We're going to tackle that more tomorrow. I also find that tackling just one paragraph at a time can be helpful. So like say you set a timer. Okay, I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, I'm going to tackle my first body paragraph. Then I'm going to walk away and do something else. Then I'm going to come back, take another 20 minutes, tackle the second paragraph. Or maybe I'm not going to do that till the next day. That can seem a lot easier than sitting down and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to take 2 hours to write this, and then it's so horrible, you don't want to do it, okay? So the actual assignment is this. You were to choose one of the following statements and decide whether you agree with it or not. Number one, men should be forced by law to financially support any children they have. Or, young people who return from juvenile detention should have to complete community service hours and write a letter of apology for past behaviors. So you have to pick one of them. Pick whichever one you think you've got a stronger opinion about on or more to write about. It needs to be at least 5 paragraphs. Your rough copy is going to be worth 20. Your final copy is going to be worth 30. Overall, it's worth 50. So it's a huge assignment. That's why I'm saying you want to do a good job. Okay. When you are looking at this, after you're finished, go through the success criteria. Okay. This is there to help you. It's kind of like giving you a heads up of what kind of things I'm looking for. Okay. I do show you the rubric, but I know for some people, the rubric is a bit intimidating, but this is a little easier. So you're going to be looking for, I have an introductory paragraph that states my opinion on one of the topics clearly. Yes or no. If it's no, go back and fix it, right? My introductory paragraph is at least 4 sentences long and introduces the 3 main reasons for my opinion. Yes or no. I have 3 body paragraphs with at least 5 sentences in each of the 3 paragraphs. Yes or no. Each body paragraph that has an opening sentence that states one reason that supports my opinion. Yes or no. Each body paragraph has other sentences that give examples or explain my reason in more detail, or explain how this reason ties into my opinion statement. And my sentences are not vague or repetitive. Each body paragraph has a closing sentence that restates the main reason in a new or interesting way, yes or no. I have a closing paragraph that restates my opinion on the topic sentence. My closing paragraph briefly restates or summarizes my 3 main reasons. I have checked for spelling, capitals, and punctuation. My sentences are complete and do not run on. And I have checked for common usage errors such as subject-verb agreement, using articles in front of singular nouns, and using prepositions correctly. Those are some of the main things we've worked on so far. So we are going to continue this tomorrow because I have a whole graphic organizer that I really strongly suggest that you use. I think it's a great way to get all your ideas down, and I find that students who use it generally do better and write better essays. Okay. Um, my time is up. It's time for the next class. If you have any questions, shoot me a message. I will be back tomorrow and we will be finishing our conversation on how to do assignment 26. All right, good luck with your assignments. And I said, give me a message if you need some help with anything.